All right. You know what it is? You know who it is? So
Oh
today
goodness.
we got another episode of the Skinny Boy Says podcast. I got a huge guest, literally and physically, literally and metaphorically. I'm really excited to talk to Jordan. He's been a huge inspiration fitness-wise for me. I just finished up. Well, I haven't finished yet. We got the test next week for the PSL one, but I'm really excited about that. It's probably been one of my favorite courses so far in terms of fitness and just learning to coach better and learning to understand things a little bit better. So Jordan, I want you to, if you can, give a brief. I know a lot about you, but brief introduction for the people that don't know about you, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, so my name is Jordan Shallow. I'm from Southwestern Ontario, so good old Canadian boy. I went to chiropractic college in California. I've been in practice for almost 6 years. I started working in the corporate wellness space at Apple's world headquarters in Cupertino, California. I transitioned to Stanford University as the head strength and conditioning coach for the Stanford University rugby team. Opened two practices, started a podcast and an online business, and then for the last 2 years I've just sort of been taking the online business on the road and been traveling most of the world, just kind of teaching applied anatomy and biomechanics. So and on the side I do a bit of competitive powerlifting as well, so that's a very, very condensed version of what's been a pretty interesting career so far. But so chiropractor, powerlifter, strength coach, and then I try and figure out how to run a business at the same time.
Yeah. I was going to say the podcast, I've been listening to podcasts for I want to say how long have you had it? It's been 3 years?
For 2016.
Yeah. So I think I've been listening to pretty close to the beginning. And I remember kind of when you guys first started. I don't know how I came across you guys. I think I came across you from, it was from Instagram, but I don't remember exactly how I think you were on something and I listened to you from someone. But as soon as I got hooked on your podcast, I was like, damn, dude, this is crazy. And I remember the first couple podcasts of you and Jordan, and you guys were just kind of going back and forth and just talking. And I was like, wow, dude, these dudes know their stuff. And actually, so a guy that works in the gym that I used to be a part of, went to school with Jinta. I think I forgot where exactly, but they went to college together, or not college together, high school together. So he knows Jinta, and I was telling him about it, and it came across this. So he's gonna be excited when he sees this podcast. I'm pretty hyped.
Man,
but first question I want to get into. What's that?
I said another one from Dallas, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So first question I want to get into. How did you get into this space, and when did you kind of decide you wanted to make a career of, I don't know if chiropractor was your main, I want to make this a career, but when did you decide you wanted to make fitness a career?
Yeah, it's a good question, man, because chiropractic and fitness aren't necessarily the same thing. So I had a few people that were pretty pivotal in kind of making my decision as far as long term, all right, what am I going to do with this thing? The first dude was actually a guy named Craig Capurso back in, I want to say 2014. Craig Capurso was he's a Northeast guy, he's from New York. He was a bodybuilder. He wrote for bodybuilding.com, was sponsored by Cellucor, competed men's physique, and then transferred into he did the first John Lindsay Classic Physique show when that division opened up. And he kind of quickly became my training partner in California. He was just working out at the gym I was at. And he was, he was always not complaining, but content creation. I didn't even know what this thing was. He was saying, I got to create content for my website and Instagram and all that. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he started.
What year was it?
To lay out 2014.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I actually ended up writing articles for his website, and that was kind of my first toe in the pool of whatever the fitness industry is or was. And I was writing weekly articles for him, and then it just kind of evolved, man. There was no big catalyst. It was just kind of I woke up this morning and I was like, okay, I guess if someone asked me what I do, I say I work in the fitness industry. But yeah, it was just I don't say leveraging, capitalizing on good opportunities and just kind of learning from people who are already in it. But I would say that was the first kind of I didn't even know it was an industry you could work in.
Yeah.
I just it's just people on Instagram doing silly things and selling protein and promo codes and stuff. And I was oh, okay. So yeah, it's definitely been an iterative process of I started writing for him, and then I started treating Dan Green. I started lifting with him, and that sort of gave me a little bit more of like a foothold kind of in that subset of powerlifting. Then I started competing myself, and then the podcast started bringing me around to different corners of the fitness industry, and next thing you know, all my closest friends were all fitness industry people, and it just sort of evolved from there, man. But yeah, there was no real and like anything, right? Like nothing's as good as you think it's going to be, and nothing's ever as bad as you think it is. So it's just like every little opportunity, and then I guess here I am. But it probably the first stone that was cast was probably meeting Craig and just like watching him operate, and then seeing the business side. And then Mind Pump podcast was another really big one for me. Like watching those guys do their thing was like just another level, and I was like, okay, this is something that's tenable. It's like it's an actual business that can work. And then just one thing led to another.
Yeah. Did you ever think of doing like anything else? Was there anything else before this that was like kind of close to taking you away? Like, do you ever think, I know maybe you don't think about it, but like, was there anything that was like, wow, I almost did this instead? Or
yeah, dude. I mean, I started my my formal education studying history and political science. Like,
oh, wow.
I came out of high school.
Okay.
Yeah, like I had a professor in high school that I really liked that studied history, and he was just like super down for it. And by extension, I was like, I really like this teacher. I don't know what I want to do, so maybe I'll just do that in university. And I liked it. I still read like a lot in history. I try and keep up with politics when I can. And it was just like by year two, it was just like I'd rather be in the gym. So it's either I'm going to drop out, or I'm going to find a way to still like study and go to the gym. And that would have been a huge change for me. Like I had to change universities, change programs, and that sort of set the stone. But yeah, I was headed for like my goal at a certain point was PhD in history and become a history professor.
Okay.
So yeah, it was definitely like, yeah. And there's been a few times where like, yeah, I had a really good corporate job when I first started. So I was pretty comfortable, like when I just graduated, like a really good job at Apple, and could have just like rode that out and just been like a corporate kind of cog in the machine, and decided like, man, I'm just gonna like go live in my car for a bit and figure it out. And so yeah, there's been a few times where it was like,
I was gonna say, when you started at Apple, was that kind of, because I've heard you talk about that a couple times, and you said that the people there were kind of like, obviously like they're a different type of breed there, and like dealing with that can probably sometimes be good, and then obviously it can sometimes be bad. Did that ever affect or kind of like put you in a position where it almost changed your mind, or like did it,
Yeah, I mean, like definitely on the chiropractic side, like it was like an accelerant in the sense that you saw so many people. Like I was seeing 250 patients a week, and it's like,
it's insane.
It changed my perspective. So I went from 250 a week on average, and then into private practice. I don't think there was a week where I saw more than 20. Because I was seeing people for an hour and a half and 2 hours at a time.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then I was, that probably was one of the strongest catalysts for like, okay, I don't think working one-to-one is something I necessarily want to do, which is antithetical to the whole way chiropractors are meant to practice. So like, how can I scale reach? How can I scale impact, and not have my time be confined or my income be defined by like the hours I have in a day? So that, I think that was what, in all aspects, working at Apple was like 10 years worth of learning in the matter of a year. Like we allow ourselves to we allow ourselves, or we license ourselves to tell ourselves certain stories that we kind of believe. But like at Apple, like people are so like disconnected, like they're so good with technology, but they don't really know anything about anatomy, right? It's two totally divergent pathways. So like if someone comes to me and like I need to explain something to a software engineer, it better make sense to a software engineer. And a lot of things that I would tell people would like be sort of built on the backs of like, a common understanding of certain anatomy that like, you go through school and everyone's kind of has the same education, your professors, everyone talks the same language. You go into another place where no one speaks that language, and you're like, and then it's just like, what the hell, right? Like, that's like, what do we do? So it was great. Like, you get a lot of different personalities, you get a lot of different, just types of people in general. And so that to me was like a big catalyst. to like, okay, this is something I definitely don't want. I
Yeah.
don't regret. I mean, I can't regret doing it, but like that for me was like,
How'd you actually
no,
get the
you
job
got
there?
to.
Was it like a friend of a friend, or is it kind of like you applied, or is it like?
Yeah, I mean, most things in my life are a consequence of some sort of strategic positioning of
Hmm.
myself. And like, not to be too insidious, but like, yeah, it was kind of a workaround story. I knew someone who was working there. Actually, I knew two people that was working there. One was applying for a PhD position. And it was like she didn't want to tell the boss. She didn't want to get fired. She ended up getting the PhD position and had to leave last minute. So I was
Hmm.
just like positioning myself the whole time. And then they were kind of left high and dry. Like, wait, like, could you do it? And it's like, got you. Stepped
Gotcha.
in,
Cool.
saved the day. Yeah, it was super lucky, man. Like everyone kind of knows Apple, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone has an iPhone, so it's quite recognizable, and pretty lucky for my like first job out of the
Yeah.
gate.
That's so cool though. That's awesome. Um, so kind of transitioning a little bit, but like, what's kind of the biggest challenge you see or you face within your role right now? Because obviously you've transitioned to, I mean, we all imagine something that we want to do, and like we imagine our career as something that's bigger than ourselves most of the time, and like you've kind of um, transitioned into a figure now where you're talking to a lot of people, you're teaching people, you're giving people your education, and basically like dwindling it down to a point where they have to understand it. And like that was one of the biggest things that I took away from the course was that um, being able to break it down to someone who necessarily doesn't care or doesn't understand, and like actually being able to you know talk to them and like have a conversation about why you want them to feel a certain way without boring them to death or without them basically not understanding. So like from transitioning from being just a everyday chiropractor to kind of where you're at now, what's kind of been the biggest challenges that you've seen and that you faced, and then how do you see yourself, how have you righted that ship, and how have you kind of like gone about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was just getting comfortable with the online stuff, right? Like, I still remember like my early YouTube videos of like setting up a tripod on my treatment table with a whiteboard and like man, I remember my first one I did. It was a 60-second video. That was right when Instagram went from 15-second videos to
Yeah,
60.
yeah,
And I was like, it should have been like a 2-hour podcast, but I tried to
yeah.
jam it into 60 seconds. So it's just like that 60-second video took me 4 hours to make because like
Wow.
I just didn't
Yeah.
know how to like talk in front of a camera. Like I didn't even know how to use the camera. So a lot of it to do was just like getting comfortable with like just speaking and like not not even like the idea of talking in front of a camera, but like kind of getting my thoughts in order because like in your head everything makes sense and you
Yeah.
do stuff and then someone asks you why and you're like
Yeah.
and you start to see like your brain sort of fills in the gaps for you with stuff that just allows you to take these leaps of concept.
Yeah.
But when you talk out loud, you're like, I'm running into a wall. I don't know how to connect this idea with this idea. So a lot of it was Lons.
I can hear you. You cut out for a second, but I can't hear you right now. I can't hear you. No,
How's that?
that's good. Perfect.
Better? Good. Yeah. So like one hand sort of washed the other as far as like, okay, I need to get better at speaking on the internet to a camera with no one in the room. How
Mhm.
do I do that? Well, if you go into a room full of people and you start talking, you actually get better. So like starting a podcast helped me with like presenting in person, and
Yeah.
presenting in person actually helped me with the podcast because when I had to speak about topics around I don't know, whatever, anatomy, biomechanics, what have you. I sort of had like those dots already connected and I knew how to verbalize that. But that was one of the biggest things and something that I think, I still kind of struggle with the idea of content creation. This is such
Yeah.
a silly way to be a
Yeah.
part of your, but it's such a deeply rooted part of what we do, I think, in relaying your message through like these mediums like Instagram and YouTube and podcasts and things like that.
Yeah. And like, I've obviously like, Gary Vee's huge, and he has the way he kind of describes it is documenting and not actually like creating, and like kind of going about, finding ways in what you do to share and give information, and not so much like create like, I have to do this today and like make up something to do tomorrow. And no, it's just like, you're talking to enough people and that type of thing. And that's why it's got to be awesome to like have the conversations that you've had with kind of the people that I can imagine that you've had those conversations with, and just give that information. And that's probably one of the coolest things, like I said, from and from your course. I appreciated it from the beginning, because it's a different view, because I've never had a course from someone who's been kind of in the trenches like you have, and in terms of like taking powerlifting to the nth degree, and then becoming a chiropractor, and having kind of like the physical experience and the mental experience and knowledge, and sharing that all as one. And like I said, for me, experience is going to be like the biggest thing for me, to learn from someone and listen to someone. And like seeing that both right there was probably like one of the selling points early on. And then it's just what's kept me around, essentially. And like, I'm sure that, like I said, I listened to your podcast with Phil DeRue the other day. And like having people like that you've talked to and just learned from, and then relaying that information is just like, it's crazy. And like when you start having those conversations, it just, you start giving information that you can't find in books, essentially. And that's probably been one of my favorite things. All right, so from your journey from start to finish, or not finish, but to current, what's been your biggest win? And then kind of dive into like your biggest failure, I guess.
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, I guess it depends on how we're categorizing both of those. Biggest win is like, it's kind of the thing where it's like nothing is as good as you think it is, nothing as bad as you think it is. Like, I would say like some big catalysts. I mean, early stages, it's hard to put one over the other because one is likely dependent on the last. So Apple was obviously really big. Getting the job at Stanford was really big. Working with Craig, working with Dan, those are massive catalysts. Like in the more like inroads fitness community, like powerlifting world, Dan is widely revered as probably like one of the best lifters of all time. And then, Andrew Herbert's not to be outdone as well. So just getting to train at Boss was awesome. Mind Pump is probably like the Mind Pump podcast. Like those guys are on another stratosphere. Like every time I'm in a really weird place and someone's like might know me or recognize me, it's like, oh, I saw you on Mind Pump. And I was like, that's like, I've been in some weird places where people have like, oh yeah, I know you. And it's like downtown Beirut, walking down the street, middle of the afternoon, like the heart of Lebanon. Someone's like, hey, Mind Pump. And I'm like, that's the weirdest fucking thing in the world. They were really big. I have friends over in Miami, Steffi Cohen and Hayden Bowe, like the hybrid crew. They've been like super. I lived with them for a bit. Like they were huge. Ben Pekulski was another one that when we started doing seminars, that was big. I have a friend, Eric, at Good Life Fitness. He took me on to do the education there. That was really big. And then as far as like the downside, the failures, it's a little stuff, man. It's like you think about those more like, honestly, now it's like keeping up with DMs. Like I feel terrible. Like I used to be really good, especially when I was flying all the time, like 15-hour flight from Dubai to Sydney. It's like I would knock out 400 DMs, and not having that's the stuff I feel bad about, is like you want to scale the same intent. There's only so much time in a day. But yeah, I don't know if like I'm pretty good. Like I'm not really having too much regret because I'm pretty stoked about where everything is right now. I would say like, it's just the little stuff, but stuff that kind of slips through the cracks. Like communication isn't what it used to be just because of the volume. But I've been pretty lucky so far to be put in some good situations.
Awesome. Now I know you're just naming all those people. Has there ever been someone that you like been starstruck over, or kind of just like, wow, this is a really cool to just sit down and just hear this person talk?
Yeah, there's been a handful, man. I would say all of those people I just listed could probably fall into that. Ben was probably the most. Even still, like we were having a chat the other day, and I still look at my phone because like I grew up in Southwest, like Canada, like Ontario. He was the first guy to really make it. Like out of I was 16, 17. He would have been mid 20s, like really high up, like in the bodybuilding world. So I kind of followed him from Jump Street, and then to like go stay at his house and train with him and go on the road with him and stuff. That was still to this day when I get a call from him, I'm like,
that's crazy.
I look at my phone and I'm like, wait, what? But honestly, like everyone really like pretty lucky that most of my friends now, I look at them like, how the fuck did I get here? There's Milos Sarcev was probably one that was really cool. Milos is an old school bodybuilder. I had dinner with him. Um, like some proper celebrities, which are like, and I'm not like a huge, like I'm a big movie guy, but I'm not a huge like celebrity guy. But one of my buddies, he's like a celebrity trainer in New York, and his clientele is just like, oh, I saw you on TV last night. I went to, but yeah, there's a handful of people that you meet, and you're just like, how did barbells get me here?
Yeah,
Which is
honestly,
pretty neat.
that's crazy. Where's been like the coolest place, you've trained overall, like kind of, or like even the favorite, or?
Yeah, that's tough, dude. You're asking me to pick a favorite child.
I know that's true. That's true.
Gold's Venice is like always a special place. If you ever get the chance to go to Gold.
I went to California not too long ago, and I didn't actually get the chance to go to Venice or Gold's Venice, which I was pretty bummed about. But I went to like Muscle Beach and all that, and like that was just an experience in general. But I've never been to Gold's Venice.
I would say that's definitely up there. And then it's just like wherever my friends are, man. Honestly, like Lost Barbell is really cool for powerlifting. Hybrid's really cool because I was there putting all the equipment in place when it opened up with them, so that was pretty neat. There's a gym in New York called Drive 495, which my buddy Don owns, which is like right on Broadway, which is, it's just the people at the end of the day. Like gym, just like a bunch of steel equipment and plates and shit. But like this place is probably the last place you'd think I'd want to train. It's got like 3 like indoor golfing bays, so you can like practice super. And I was like, I don't golf, man. I can really put my clothes together, but like, a gym like that, just a bunch of good people. So that's usually the criteria for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now you used to play hockey, you said, right? And that's been kind of like the thing is, how did that kind of influence the rest of your getting into this now? Like in terms of, I kind of asked that in the beginning, but in terms of like getting into chiropractor school, kind of developing, because obviously you weren't this your whole life. So like, how did, playing hockey or playing sports, did that have an impact, and in what capacity did it have an impact in kind of making you what you are today?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I was pretty serious about hockey as a kid, like from 7 to 17, it was everything I did, like live, breathe. That was like my only purpose in life was to play hockey. And as I like got better, got older and started playing for better teams, like that's what actually really got me into training to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, training was a byproduct or a side effect of hockey. I wanted to train. Oh, if I train, I'll get better at playing hockey. Sweet. Yeah. I'll go work out. So I started working out, not with the intent of, being a powerlifter or being a bodybuilder or anything like that. I just wanted to get better at playing hockey. So it was integral, man. Cause like when I would get injuries when playing hockey, I would go see a chiropractor, and then I would go to the gym, and I was like a personal trainer. And, as I got bigger and stronger, better at hockey, and hockey, like sort of like, if you're not in the NHL by the time you're 20, like you're going to have a hard time cracking the league.
Yeah.
So I had a decision to make of like, okay, do I want to take the long road now and try and make it through like the American Hockey League or the OHL or something like that, or get picked up as an overager, or do I want to go to school? So like without hockey, man, none of this would have happened, because like that was the driving force to get in the gym. That was, what forced me to get, take like injury rehabilitation seriously. That's what, like, I had a couple of really bad knee injuries, and it was a chiropractor that got me back on the ice. Like I remember like driving home after a game, and like I had to call my dad from my driveway because I couldn't get out of the truck. Like I couldn't turn my body to get out of the truck. I was like, I'm just fucking sitting there. And it was a chiropractor that straightened me out. So it was, it just introduced me to everything that I do now. And I don't play as much. Well, I haven't played in years, but it's still like before they lower me into the ground, like I'm going to get my name on the Stanley Cup somehow. I might be a fucking fucking janitor if I have to, but that's the end goal, man, is to like get back in with like strength and conditioning at the NHL level. Because to me, it's religion. And you grew up in Canada, man. Like we have baseball and basketball and all that stuff in Toronto, but hockey's it.
Yeah. Who's your favorite team?
Vancouver Canucks.
Oh, okay, cool. I don't really watch hockey that much, but I was a huge Devils fan when I was younger.
Yeah, so. Dude, man, especially when you were growing up, dude, that was the heyday for the Devils.
Because I was like 10 in 2004 when they had Scott Stevens, and he like almost killed Paul Kariya on the middle of the ice.
Everyone in the world remembers that except Paul Kariya.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, he got destroyed. And I remember I was 10. I was like, oh my god, it was crazy. Man. All right. So like biggest surprise in the last few months, obviously besides COVID, but like biggest surprise that you've had in your career, in your life, in your fitness, you know.
Ah, that's tough, man. Biggest surprise. Um, yeah, it's probably just more on the business end, man. Like I don't have a background in business. Like I'm not good with math. I don't know how my taxes get paid every year. I'm assuming they're getting paid. Someone's taking care of it for me.
We'll find out
Yeah,
eventually, right?
right. Yeah, I end up like Wesley Snipes or something. Yeah, I think I think it's been more so like taking an inventory and actually what it takes to run a business.
Yeah.
That's probably been like my biggest surprise, like having, you know, almost 6 months now of like not being able to really like run away from it. Like for the last couple of years, I've been very much working in my business and just like go, like different city,
Yeah.
different country every week. I think this year was meant to be like the craziest. Like we were meant to do 47 cities between January and November, 12 different countries. So I was like, sick, a whole another year of me ignoring all the stuff I should probably pay attention to.
Yeah.
But like being locked down, just like, the business end, more like understanding business strategy, understanding like, finance to a little bit, like, but understanding kind of like more leadership roles within the company and
Yeah.
structures and investments and things like that. So that's been like the biggest, like, oh, okay, like, it's not just it's not just having a website and Instagram page and a fucking PayPal account.
I was gonna say, it's the thing is like, you get to a point where obviously you want to do this, but you never, I mean, you expect to blow up, but then like when it happens, you're like, oh man, like what do I do? And then like you have to try to like almost, if you don't have the foundation or you don't have the systems in place and that starts to happen, then you start to see the cracks. One of the things for me was, and like I told you, I left the gym that I was working at, and I think that this whole virus, obviously it's happening, and like, but it gave a lot of people, especially me, a chance to kind of sit back and like look and like survey and be like, am I doing this right? How do I want to do this? If I am doing this right, how do I continue to do it right? And it gave me, I'm sure it gave you a lot of opportunity to kind of like just look and be like, all right, like if I am doing this wrong, how can I fix it? And some of the answers for me were obviously different from obviously your answers, but like, I've seen kind of the growth of you guys over, the past 4 years, and it's been huge as of late. And I don't know if that's because I've been more involved with what it is that you guys are doing, and like I'm seeing it more and I'm paying attention to it more, but like it just seems like, you guys are just taking steps in the right direction too. It's not just like, you guys are going deeper instead of just wider, and like you're actually getting, involved with each person. You're taking the time to do this with a person who's obviously been through your certification. And like, that's, I think that's, to me, that's the right way to do it. Cause you're building raving fans and people who are, no matter what, I got nothing to say. Like all I got is good things to say. And like, I just had my sister sign up for your course this upcoming semester. And she's never even trained before. So she's like thinking about it, and she's kind of, heard you talk about, and just kind of like heard you talking throughout the weeks. And she was like, yeah, I want to try it. And I was like, I wouldn't recommend really anything else. So like, it's been kind of awesome to see, and like those surprise, but you don't know, like as you get the time to look, you're able to dive deeper. And with this whole virus, it probably gave you a chance to just create an experience that's really that much better with the certification, right? I would assume like it just kind of,
it's just, man, it gave you, I think for me anyways, it feels like it gave you 10 years worth of perspective.
Yeah.
Like I think you said it perfect. Like you'll figure out where the cracks are, and whether it's an in-person business or an online business. And like, and that's why I said like the biggest like regret I have, or like the biggest mistake or downfall, is like not having the time, or not even not having the time, like not having the systems in place to have enough time for like all those DMs. Cause like, this is what I really like is, just hopping on a podcast. Like, there were 16 weeks where you just sat there muted while I talked. And now it's like, okay, now we could just have like, we could kick it around. Right. And that's what I want. Like, and that's where I get mad at myself from like a system standpoint. Like, okay, why are my systems so like all over the place that they won't allow for me to sit down for an hour and like go through emails and direct messages and actually get back to everyone? So like, that was probably what this highlighted the most, is that like, there's room for improvement on like the people side of it. Because before, like, our first intake, of the level 1 course was 31 coaches,
Mhm.
which was like, you know everyone by name, like,
Yeah.
everyone gets to connect really well. But I mean, starting up this week, like we're over, I think we have like over 200.
That's
So
great.
that's pretty difficult, and not difficult. The challenge now becomes like, okay, how can I make sure that I like know where all these coaches are, know kind of like what their background is, what their business is. And the only way to do that is like, look, I need to have better systems in place. So the stuff I do throughout the day is just focused around, the coaches that have gone through the program. And I don't need to worry about, keeping the lights on, so to speak. So that's kind of where things are headed. And that's really like, my main focus is like getting back to that, because that's the whole point of doing it, man. Like that's what makes it worth doing. Otherwise I'm just talking to a fucking computer screen all day by myself. Right.
Yeah. And like, it's cool. It's gotta be cool on your end to see like, the growth and the changes through people. Obviously, like there's people out there who are doing this for the wrong reasons, not through your course, but I'm saying there's people who are doing this for the wrong reasons in every business. But like in fitness, it's kind of like, it's hard because there's a lot of subjective things that can happen, and you can see results from a lot of things, and then you go down that route and it's like, oh, well, this worked, this didn't. But like, it's got to be cool for you to see the success that probably everyone that's gone through is having, and kind of just sharing, and the confidence. Because I know, after the certification, after the first few weeks, I had like a level of understanding and confidence. I was like, all right, like this is cool. And like, I went right into the gym and I was training people, and I was utilizing some of the stuff you talked about, and just different positioning, and just thinking about things a little bit different. I bought like a makeshift, like a pulley, like a cable, because I was like, I'm not using bands anymore. Like, screw that. And like, the cable I just started using on myself, and like just the results you kind of see from thinking about it, and the way that you talked about it is just, it's different. And then once you start utilizing it, it's even more different. And then you start putting it with people, and you're like, you see it and you're like, wow, this is like, actually, because I've done certifications, like, I've done a few other certifications, and even like my college, I have a degree in human bio. I learned more from your course than I did in 4 years of school. And like, sometimes that, like, I was like, damn, man, like, what, you know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of, it's like a weird thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to teach applied things in any setting that's not a gym, right? Like, and that's where, like, I mean, that's kind of my main focus is like, how can we keep it so when you do walk into the gym a day after a lecture, like, you can start to look and apply things differently. But it's yeah, I mean, a lot of it was born out of same frustration, dude. Like, I didn't learn any of the chiropractic. I was like, I got an undergrad and a double major, and it was because I got to train with Dan Green and like do stuff with Ben Pekulski. And if I have a question about something, I can call Ed Cohen or something. Like, that's really like, I think the value in it is because it can be like applied, right? And it's stuff like, the cool thing for me is that it's 16 weeks long. Like, I get to watch 4 months of like, I try to follow everyone on social, like, everyone that like tags or whatever, like, I follow on social, find them on Facebook, and just like keep an eye on like kind of what they get up to. And we're lucky, man. Like, I think we self-select for a student, or like people that are down with the cause, that already have the wheels in motion. Like, we're not like super out there on social media as far as like, I don't have like 1 million fucking followers or anything like that. But like, you kind of, if you're down with us, like, you're down with listening to our podcast, which is like, each one's like an hour at least, or like, you're down to listen to my like 20-minute Instagram TVs on one exercise. Like, some people just aren't down with it, right? So they're like, fuck this, I'm not going to listen to more complicated shit. And they just self-select out. So, and that's the cool part too, is like, over the 4 months, like, you get to watch everyone individually, but you get to watch how like, the networks meet up. Cause like, I think it's a pretty unique person that wants to sit through and listen to like some of the stuff that we talk about. But when these people go, oh shit, like, you're in Jersey, I'm in New York, or even like, hey, I'm in Australia, or like, let's do a podcast. And so like, seeing the interconnection between like minds, and kind of being the catalyst for that in a certain degree, like bringing everyone in and just being like, throw in the coolest, smartest cocktail party in town. Like, it's a pretty cool experience to see, like, like getting other people in the course that they met through the course on podcasts, and like collaborating in person. Like, that's what really, like, for me, that's it. When I see that, it's like, fucking job done. Like, I don't need anything.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So speaking of the certification, you're always, you're always teaching. You're always the one who's kind of like giving the information. How do you kind of continue to learn yourself, and like how do you kind of make sure that everything up here is fresh and you're learning new ideas and things like
So yeah, two ways, man. One is like I have mentors as well. Like I have people that I learn from, and like there's nothing for me in the run of a week to spend, a couple $100, maybe $1,000, whatever, in paying just for people's time. Like if I have a specific question about neuroanatomy or like, periodization, I just seek out like the best that I think in those fields. And I was like, hey, like I want your time for an hour. I have like a consolidated list of questions about the topic that you're the best in the world at. And I just go right to them. So like I already have like, I have presumptions and predictions and like very direct inquisitions about each topic. And then I find the person, I just get them to sort of answer those questions and kind of get their insight, and then run my theory by them and kind of kick the ball around. So that's one. And then another is like lateral fields, like totally like right now I'm 4 weeks into a course called CS50, which is like a Harvard edX computer science course. Okay. So it's like, half of my week is like learning within kind of like the realm of study that I teach in. So like biomechanics, strength and conditioning, sport performance, cellular physiology, whatever. And then the other half is like, okay, get your mind totally away from this and totally on a different way of thinking. So like, it used to be history, political science. Lately it's gone more computer science. So I have like an enrolled semester of a university course that I'm taking there. So those are the two ways I kind of keep balance. Like, seeing not only when I like get on these hour calls with these experts in different fields, like not only like gleaning the information that they give me, but also how they deliver it. And then same thing on the other side is like, how are they delivering this computer science course online? How can I learn from the delivery of the content? But how can like the concepts taught, obviously like there's not a direct correlation between computer science and training, but like there's correlations in the way you can think, and you can, so just deeper concepts in a lateral field help kind of transfer over into like how I teach and what I teach. So those are two things I take like pretty seriously, because that's how, for me, that's kind of my job now, is like I need to kind of stay on that leading edge. So I'm always making sure I'm covering both of those bases.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, like I said, you talk to someone like you and you're like, oh, he just knows. And it's like, people are always reaching out. Like they're reaching out, they're learning from other people. And like, I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions is that people have to figure it out themselves. And I was kind of like that when I was younger. I mean, I'm still young, I'm only 25, but like, even when we just started the gym, I was in a point where I was like, oh, I have to figure it out. Like I have to try to do this. Like I can't go reach out for help. I can't look at it in this way. But like, then I started learning and like actually reaching out and listening and seeing like, oh, the best people in the world are learning from other people that you might have never heard of. They're just taking it and they're doing it in a different way. That, like I said, that's been one of the coolest things. And like I said, that's why a question that I wanted to ask, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who listen, like I said, they listen to you talk and they're like, oh, he just knows. Like that's why he went to school and he went to this and he went to that. And like, but it's cool to hear you say, like, I reach out, I spend my money, I take people's time, and like I ask these questions because that's how I get better, and I'm able to present a better product to the people who are paying for the certification. That's really cool to hear. So in terms of fitness, or the certification in general, but like, what's some of the things that you're most excited about and diving into and kind of researching and thinking and talking about?
Right. So yeah, we have the level 1 course, obviously. So I'm most excited now. Well, a few things. Like I'm huge on the idea of like iteration and making things like an iterative process. So I mean, for those of you like aren't familiar, the course I teach it live, and it's across 16 weeks, and it's an hour a week, but I actually teach the same lecture 4 times. Which everyone's like, don't you get bored of saying the same shit? It's like, no, because like literally every hour is different. Even when I go like back to back, like, there's one day where I did 3 hours back to back of the same lecture. And it was like, a very quick appraisal, assessment, and then application of what I assessed from 1 hour to the next. Like I always think of Bruce Lee, like, fear not a man who knows 10,000 kicks, fear a man who's done to one kick 10,000. Yeah. So when I think about the course, like, I've done this will be the fourth or fifth. So I've done each lecture like 20 times, 30 times at least, not like when I use it in person as well. It's like I know this stuff like the back of my hand, but every single time I'm like a little bit nervous because I'm changing something. So like I'm always excited about the different iteration of, like, we have, you know, students starting this week. So level, like the week one I've done however many times I've done it, but now looking forward, I'm also excited about the level two. So what's kind of occupying my time. The level two is going to be much more. So there's going to be an advanced anatomy module, which goes a little bit more in depth into like breathing mechanics, rib cage and pelvic floor and pelvis. Then there's going to be Neuro 1. So it's going to be an introduction to neuroanatomy. Again, trying to keep it more on the applied side, but really trying to, without getting too like pissed off, but there's a movement now where people are conflating what's called arthrokinematics with biomechanics, which is basically arthrokinematics is like the study of joint mechanics, which is like a really bones first model. So my goal with like level one coaches is, you know, above all else, like don't be a dick, right? That's kind of like that's a sign on the wall. Like I don't want the assholes here. You take that shit down the road. But on top of that, like the idea with the course is to really create a high resolution model of the human body, right? So it's not, we don't say like teach you a system, like a systems way of thinking. And so where the course is going, like the trajectory of like the prescript courses is much more sport specific. Like we start off with like basic foundations, like mobility, stability, strength. This sort of works for most of the people most of the time, like general population applications, all the way up to like, you know, getting into like athletics. We're really pushing more toward the athletic side with the level two course. So, you know, more advanced periodization models or introducing periodization models for sport. Sprint mechanics is going to be a big part of it. Technology, understanding how to interpret biometrics like Oura rings, Whoop bands, HRV, sleep cycles, like how to interpret that. We're going to dive a little bit into blood labs, just understanding some of like the subcomponents of like a CBC or like a complete blood count. So that's going to be where things are headed. So that's what really is like exciting for me, is getting back to sort of my roots from strength and conditioning. I've been out of like a team setting now for 2 years. I still do concierge like strength and conditioning for individual athletes in professional sports, but really trying to steer that ship more towards like human performance with sort of this very, I don't want to say generalist, but like with the level one being a really good opening offering of like, okay, here are the fundamentals that you can build upon to really start to push human performance. So that's really what I'm excited about coming up.
Well, do you plan on doing like how many levels, I guess, are there going to be to, or have you not thought about that?
No, I have. Yeah. I'd shout out COVID for, they could be sitting down actually. So there's going to be, right now there's 4 planned, with one of them being actually a high performance internship, but that's like probably, well, I can say whatever the fuck I want because I own both companies, not to be a dick, but like, so there's, I started another company on the side, which will probably go live in January. That'll feed into like the level 3 and level 4 and make it more of like a high performance internship. So give level 1 and level 2 coaches a chance to actually get hands-on and program with professional athletes, which I think will be pretty unique.
Sign me up. Where do I sign up?
So yeah, that'll be the level 3 and 4. That's already planned, and 5 will likely be like bringing on like coaches through the ranks that want to teach. And I think that, like I said earlier, like I didn't realize the gaps in my knowledge and the stories I was telling myself in my head for things to make sense until I like went to go talk. I was like, wait a minute, I'm making some quantum fucking leap in my brain that this makes sense. I need to either be able to bridge this with words or I need to get rid of it. So I think that to me is like one of the bigger catalysts was just getting up in front of a room. So I think for coaches, really what you do is you teach people, right? That's your whole day. So if you can go from teaching, you know, 1 athlete in 1.5 hours to, you know, 10 coaches in 3 hours, or 100 coaches in 3 hours, or 250 coaches in 16 weeks, it's like your time's better spent creating a better impact at the end user. So that'll likely, if we roll out a level 5, that'll be what level 5 is basically like seminar staff, like teaching. So yeah, four levels for sure, with the 5th one still being contingent. Like a lot of things change really quickly. So level 2 is going to roll out in March of next year, knock on wood if all goes well. with level 3 probably following a year after that. But yeah, it's exciting.
It's exciting stuff. You got me excited. I'm ready. I'm ready to do that stuff. I can't wait. That's really all the questions I got. Definitely, like I said, if you guys are looking to kind of take that next step, or just looking to learn from someone who's has great information, the Prescript guys, Jordan specifically. I don't know, does Jinta or does he do anything, or is he going to be doing anything?
Comment. So Genta's coming. Genta's been developing for years, actually, an Olympic weightlifting course.
Cool.
Just because I think it's, of all things, it's probably the one discipline that's the most poorly taught.
Yeah.
And he's probably, I would argue, one of the best in the world. Just from like a fundamental understanding of human movement. Like he kind of just laughs and like, we go back and forth on stupid jokes and talk about.
I know. I feel like when I listen to you guys, I always want to hear him talk more, and he doesn't.
But that's the thing. He's like, when he does, it's just gold, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It'll be so valuable just because it's all him. Like they're in production phase right now. It'll go to like editing and processing. That course should be up within I think mid-October. That'll be like fully automated course, so you can sign up and just take it. And all the modules are going to be like really sharp. And he's gone through, and I've read the curriculum, and it's insane. And then Killian has a course coming up as well. So his main focus is on basically the skill acquisition model.
Yeah.
Which pairs well with kind of where we're going with the level 2 with like sports specificity and human performance. So I looked at this the other day. We're going to have 8 courses by June of next year.
Cool.
So we have the level 1 now, skill acquisition, Olympic weightlifting. Kayla has applied women's physiology and training.
Yeah, that looks really cool.
That'll be brought into the fold. With programming and a handful of other stuff. So it's exciting to like broaden our offerings a bit and give people more licensing of like, I want to learn more specifically about, hypertrophy fundamentals and body composition, or applied women's physiology and training, or skill acquisition, or Olympic weightlifting, or barbell, or powerlifting. So yeah, it's definitely starting to sort of take shape a little bit.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, like I said, I appreciate the time today. If people want to reach out, you want to give them all the stuff?
Yeah. So Instagram, best way to find me is at @the_muscle_doc. Email also works well. So you have like, a little bit more in-depth inquiries, just shoot me an email, jordan@themuscledoc.com. Prescript stuff is online, www.pre-script.com, on Instagram at pre_script. And podcast is RX Radio on iTunes and Spotify. Yeah,
I'll put all that stuff under. I'll make sure you guys know. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Jordan, appreciate you stopping by. This is awesome. This is like kind of one of those that I was asking you, one of those people you meet and you get to talk to. And you're like, oh man, hope to meet you in person someday.
Dude, I'm headed back to North America in 20-something days. Once the U.S. borders open, we'll make it happen.
I might have to come to Cali. Are you going back to Cali anytime soon or no?
No, man, go to Toronto, Canada.
Well, I mean, like when you come back to the U.S. or no?
No, man.
Coming back to the U.S.?
No, going right to Canada. Yeah.
All right. Well, then maybe I'll have to come to Canada then. We'll see. I got my passport. So I appreciate it. I'm going to end this and then I'll just talk for another minute. But thank you guys for stopping by. I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.